Welcome back to the Product Marketing Festival. As we prepare to unleash another exciting session, I just want to say a massive thank you to our partners, sponsors, you, and our ensemble of speakers and participants for helping us bring this event to life. I hope you are finding today's sessions insightful, and I want to remind you that the learnings don't stop here. If you haven't already, you can become a PMA member and benefit from unlimited access to exclusive templates, frameworks, mentors, our entire back catalogue of event content, and much, much more. What's more, you can continue the conversation in the PMA's Slack community. If you aren't already a member, then hop on over and join the discussions today. And remember, this is your chance to get involved. Please share your feedback and questions in the comments section for our speakers to answer. It really is that simple. Let's resume the sessions.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me for my session. This is Establishing a Market Sizing Framework, TAM, SAM, and what else, ma'am? My name is Minerva Tai, and I'm a manager in product marketing at Avalara. All right, so first things first. When you hear people talk about market sizing, some acronyms are thrown around, and you might wonder, what's a TAM? Who's SAM? And can somebody please help me? I hope to be the one to be able to do that for you today. So some more background about me. As I had said before, my name is Minerva Tai. My pronouns are she, her, and I get really excited when thinking about how to creatively solve big problems using data and gathering interdisciplinary perspectives. My background is varied and it includes product marketing, partner marketing, brand management, copywriting, and graphic design. I've also developed the market sizing framework at Avalara. And if you're keen on Clifton's strengths, my top 5 are inputs, learner, intellection, individualization, and achiever. Let's dive in. Definitions. TAM, while it is also a hat, in this context, it stands for total addressable market. This is the overall revenue opportunity that's available to a product or a service if 100% of initial target market and follow-on markets is achieved. It's going to answer that question. If we captured 100% of the market, how much money could we make? SAM, not a person, could be a person, In this case, it's the serviceable addressable market. This is a segment of TAM whose needs are relevant to the product's value propositions and are within the geographical or technological reach of your business. Knowing SAM answers the question, what is the monetary value of the market within our reach? And then SOM is a serviceable, obtainable market. This is a subset of SAM that is the realistic market share your business can capture through the distribution channels and resources available to you. This is going to help you answer the question, what is the monetary value of the share of market within our immediate reach? Why do each of these matter? Each component of market sizing really serves a different purpose, but all together, they're going to help your business with strategy from ideation and discovery to getting a product into market and measuring that success. As a product marketer, your ability to analyze all of these elements will position you as the expert of your market. If you're thinking about TAM, understanding TAM is going to give you the insights into the potential upper bound of the market and help you prioritize the investment of resources and funding for product development. Knowing TAM is going to help you make business decisions because it's going to help you guide whether or not this launch is going to be big or small. Is the market worth it? And think about some iterative improvements to your business. Understanding SAM is going to give you insight into how and where to go to market because you're considering the external factors that you can actually seek to overcome over time as your product develops. It's going to help you make go-to-market decisions. And coming down from TAM, the sizing typically decreases but the precision and utility of that information increase. And then SOM, that's going to give you insight into the potential success when going to market with what you have. With all these pieces, you know what they are now. Why do you need a framework? Well, to effectively allocate investments and resources, you need accurate and realistic assessments of your market size and a consistent approach to doing such analyses, especially if you're going to be doing many different projects around market sizing for the same business. That framework is going to help you with consistency. Because ultimately, for market sizing, the math truly is simple. It's just the number of customers multiplied by money. However, the process itself, it's not simple. You're going to have to consider a couple of things, which are which market is in scope, which data do you use, and why have you made certain assumptions? We're going to dig into each of these elements. So let's start with what market do we want? This is about scoping. Essentially, you need to know and determine what is the question that you are trying to answer and define it. Some considerations here as you're thinking about this and building out your framework. You'll have to think about what are the factors you'll always want to know for every sizing to make sure that there's consistency. Now, are there finite limitations to your market? Are you going to need to frame this in any hierarchical way so you can answer future questions in a similar fashion? And what data are you going to need in order to answer this question? Now, this session is not all theoretical. We're going to put each element into practice through an example that carries throughout. So let's pretend I am a company with a product called Choosy Choose, and I want to size my market. By the way, I don't know if Choosy Choose is a real product or not, but if it is, I'm not talking about that one. These numbers are made up. The product is made up. What's not made up are the dogs that you'll see throughout this presentation. This is kind of an excuse for me to share photos of my rescues, Atticus and Audrey. And hope you think they're cute. I think that they are, and you'll see a little bit more from them throughout this presentation. So yeah, let's get back to the topic of Choosy Choose. We were just talking about scoping and how that first step to take is knowing what question I want answered. So my question here is going to be, it's going to sound kind of simple, which is what is the market size for Choosy Choose in the US? Now, simple sounding question, but I have to really think, how am I going to get there? I'll have to consider factors for my TAM and SAM. And in this case, my TAM bounds are going to be that I think my market is US-based businesses that are B2C, they're boutique retail pet stores. And my SAM bounds will require that these pet stores carry dog treats and that they have regular considerations for adding new products. And then we're just, to keep it simple, we're going to pretend that I don't have any distribution issues and I can still service the entire United States. So there are plenty of other factors you can take into consideration as you develop your framework. And each of these that I'm going to show are ways to get more granular per component. And you will want to get more granular because you want to get more accurate as you go from TAM to SAM to SOM. So for TAM, things that you can think about, the products, services, and ecosystems that you are going after, the geographies, the type of customers, are they businesses or are they individual consumers? If you're targeting businesses, are they B2B, B2C, both? If you're targeting individual consumers, what are their demographics? Maybe you have a business or you are working for a company where individuals of a certain age group matter to you or a certain economic level. A couple of things you can be thinking about there. You'll also want to consider industry restrictions, who really is your customer? And then also, how do you segment? Are you going after what you consider a small business, enterprise, mid-market? I don't know. There are different ways that you can segment. For SAM, this is, if you recall, going to depend on factors that are within your control when it comes to servicing the market. So if there are particular geographical restrictions for you, like you can't, get to certain regions, that could be something that shaves down your market when you're considering SAM. Are there regulatory restrictions that make it difficult for your company to distribute to your market? What about industries and demographics that you can't readily serve or can? Do you have the technology? Are there psychographic or cultural behaviors you need to consider? Pricing tolerance, maybe? And then if you get to SOM, which was the serviceable obtainable market, which refers to, you know, if you're thinking about what are the resources and channels available to you, you might then take into consideration your databases, your different sales and marketing channels, market growth rates, campaign conversion rates, you know, your historic performance essentially, competitors and competitive responses. You can't expect that when you launch a product that your competitors aren't going to have some sort of, you know, reaction to what you released. Maybe they even come out with a competitive product. And even sales team capacity can come into effect. You know, if your sales team, if your sales force is not large enough to do the volume of sales that you're hoping for, you need to take that into consideration. And again, all of these are examples. Your framework should outline which will be applicable to your business. So if you're really establishing a framework that you can use that's repeatable and consistent, you should be able to say, well, XYZ are the factors we'll use every time we scope a market sizing project. So in my example earlier, I had chosen to address geography, customer type, industry, and a segment when it came to my TAM. So next up, which is the data that we use? This is about sourcing. You'll want to understand which data sources are reliable and then be able to defend why you'll use them. So some things to consider are the integrity and the accessibility of the information. And when I say integrity, I do mean, are you confident that this is good data? And if someone wanted to check your work, could they access it later? What about the methodology for data collection? You know, would you have more trust in a report that looked at 5,000 businesses and their responses, or an individual survey of 5 people? You might want to go with the one that has a bigger sample size, or one that is just statistically significant. And then recency and update frequency, something to think about. If you're working with a vendor who only updates their information every 10 years, and you're working in an industry that is very fast paced, that's probably not the source for the information that you need. And then what are the assumptions that you'll need to make to fill the gaps? So if we go back to choose, remember again, the math is simple. It's number of customers times money. So in my example here, I've considered many options, and I actually decided that the US Census information, the latest of which is from 2017, is going to be my best bet for locating the number of customers. So I've thought about this data source's defensibility, its accessibility, and its methodology to make my decision. And I've decided that I only plan on selling directly to pet stores rather than broadly to any other type of businesses. So this actually helps me because the source that I chose specifically identifies that pet and pet supply stores are indicated by NAICS code 453910. And what that is in reference to is the North American Industry Classification System, which is a standard way to classify businesses from a federal statistics standpoint. And they've called out pet and pet supply stores. They've also, in this data set, indicated what number of firms have what number of employees within certain bands. And so if I were to think that my boutique pet stores have less than 5 employees, and I look at my census data, it tells me that there are 2,696 businesses with less than 5 employees within that NAICS code. So I've got my number of potential customers now. For money, I'm going to use internal data for average sales price. So I'm going to expect My customers are going to buy $2,500 worth of Choosy Choose per year. We're going to keep it simple for this exercise. I don't know if that's true, but let's pretend it is. You may choose a different measure of money depending on your business model, though, as you're building out your framework. So if you are, let's say, SaaS-based, you might want to think about annual recurring revenue, or ARR, as the more accurate approach here. So keep that in mind when you build your framework. Like, what is the measure of money that's important to me? Here are some potential data sources to consider, both internally and externally. And if you're looking at these, you're probably thinking, when might you use each? Well, you might leverage internal data when you're exploring existing products and markets. There's some information you can gather from your customer firmographics and demographics, or their revenue, or your pricing structure, campaign performance, sales performance, your own product and BI dashboards, and even any primary research you've done. Those are all potential sources of information for you to use in your exercises. Now, when you're exploring new markets and new products, you may rely on external data instead, which means you could be digging into statistics from national agencies or top analyst firms. You might also find use in information from industry-specific publications and reports. And if you're going to be sizing things that, markets that are new to you and for new products, it could be pretty difficult, but you can also look around and see what competitive information you can find from existing vendors who are serving that market with a similar product. And in any situation, the data is not going to be perfect, and any gaps are definitely going to need to be filled with some assumptions, which is where we're going next. If you're going to be covering those gaps, why these assumptions? So this is a little bit of surmising mixed with some hopefully rational conclusions. You'll want to decide on which assumptions to make and then declare them up front so that anyone who's looking at your market sizing understands why you made these assumptions and what they are. So some considerations. The defensibility of your claims. Declaring it as one thing, but also just make sure that you have some citations or some place where you list these assumptions so that you can defend them later on. And this actually can also be helpful if you do a market sizing, let's say at the very beginning of a product launch, during the ideation or discovery period, and then maybe it's months before you go back to it again. You'll want to know what assumptions you made when you made these calculations. If you were using any industry benchmarks to help you make these assumptions, make sure that you indicate these as well as their sources. You may make some assumptions based on behaviors that have been observed internally or externally. Maybe some assumptions have been made due to primary and secondary research you've done. In all cases, make sure that they are all things that you can declare and defend. And then there may also just be some underlying assumptions that are unique to your business that can carry over into your framework. Hey, in every situation where I'm doing a market sizing, because our business does this, we will always assume this in all cases. You know what's you know what applies to your business best. Okay, so if I had done some research on Choosy Choose, I might have uncovered a few things on which I'll base my assumptions. So let's say I interviewed customers and I found that only 33% of them consider adding new product lines annually. And then I looked around and I found a credible industry report that indicates only 5% of stores don't sell dog treats. Now, did I interview every possible pet store? Nope. And did the report survey every possible pet store? It's doubtful. However, we do need to make these assumptions. So here we will. We're going to assume for our TAM purposes that a boutique pet store means that they have less than 5 employees. I actually made this assumption earlier when I was looking through how do I, find which number to use for my number of customers in my data source. And then we're going to assume that they all will buy Choosy Choose. For our SAM purposes, we're going to consider this, behavioral findings, and we're going to assume that these research findings are going to apply across my market. With all those in mind, this brings us to our calculations based on everything we discussed. And remember, this is an incredibly basic example. Your situation could easily be more complex. However, having a framework will really help simplify it. Okay, TAM. Remember, calculations, number of customers times money. With TAM, that was simple. It really is just the number of customers that I found from my data source, which is the US Census data on pet and pet supply stores, times the $2,500 that I believe I will be charging my customers. So it brings us to a TAM of $6,740,000. Great. Let's get a little bit more specific when we get down to SAM. Now, my customer count is going to change a little bit because I've made some assumptions here that based on my research that 95% of these businesses sell dog treats, and then of those, 33% are willing to consider new products. So all those together equal my number of customers, and we're still going to sell to them at $2,500. So that takes my SAM to $2,112,990. And then let's jump into SOM. A little different here. And here's why. SOM is going to rely on the channels and resources available to you. And if my resources, I've considered the parameters in TAM and SAM and defining who my market is, but my database only gives me a certain number of businesses that fit that mold, I may start with a different number here for my number of customers in my equation. So I only found 200 in my database, and when I typically market to my database, I only get about a 5% win rate. So we're going to assume that here, and then we're going to also assume that in year 1, I actually discount how much I sell to these because it's my first year, first year of the product. So we're selling them at $2,000. This actually comes out to a sum of $20,000. And since this is looking at year 1, let's add in year 2. Year 2, we think about that that number of 200 businesses, and we know from our information that the market grows at 3%, and then we're also going to still consider that 5% win rate when I do campaigns. We're going to multiply that by the full price now because we're in year 2, so multiply by $2,500 leads me to a SOM in year 2 of $25,750. So you can see how it gets more complex with the more factors we consider and how much more information we have. And in your case, as you're establishing a framework, knowing which of these is important is going to be key for you. So all these numbers, let's look at it visually. The circles aren't exactly proportionally represented since the SOM bubble that would be nearly non-existent compared to TAM and SAM, but you get the picture. Each level of specificity is going to really narrow your market further, but it's going to increase your accuracy in order to guide the strategy about your market. Now, considering everything that we covered, how good is a framework if you don't build a practice around using it? Let's think about how do we build a process. This is about scaling now. You're going to want to use the framework to help with market sizing, which then helps with planning and decision-making, and then distribute the necessary information about the process. So what's that process? First, identify which factors are relevant to your business. Then create that standard framework. Establish a timing on when market sizing happens. So you may say, we do TAMs and SAMs at the beginning of our planning to see if a project is worth pursuing. And then we do SOM later when we have a better sense of our go-to-market strategy and what are the ways that we can tweak that strategy to have a more favorable outcome. You're going to build an intake process and ensure that there is resourcing for it, as in there's someone on the receiving end of the intake process who can actually do the market sizing. Could be you. You're going to socialize this framework to make sure everyone understands what the framework is and what all the definitions are as they pertain to your business. And then you're going to use the results to guide decision making. So this is important because this is going to really put you in that spot where you are the expert of the market. So let's summarize the pieces needed to establish a market sizing framework. 1. Which factors will you use to define scope? 2. Which data sources are valid to your business? 3. Which assumptions can you make that are sound? And 4. How do you plan on sustaining that process? Well, I hope this was informative and that you learned something today that will prove useful in your product marketing career. If you need to contact me, find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. Though if you want to see more dog pictures, I'd recommend following me on Twitter instead of LinkedIn. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Product Marketing Fest. Thanks.